Hello and welcome back to something I haven't streamed in absolutely ages, Kerbal Space Program. It had an update in early December which has added one or two things that are long overdue but quite nice additions. What I'm playing here is basically unmodded, but as the title says, I do have tweak scale and also some visual mods, but apart from that, I think MechJeb's also in there, but I don't know if it's actually working with 1.6 yet, so I guess we'll find out. But what I'm trying out is a thing I saw somebody do ages and ages ago on Reddit. And what that thing is basically strictly following the contracts. Only doing what is specified in contracts. So no extra science gathering unless it's in contracts, just building craft to meet contracts, which is, it's something a little bit different. It's not really I mean, it's more that it slows down the science gain, and it kind of makes you think about which contracts you want to do a bit differently, but it's also not going to lead to me doing as adventurous things as I've done with my 1.22 modded version, which I've still got sat around. I just haven't touched that in a while. I'm just turning the music up, by the way. I was wondering why I'm showing you the screens there. This is a weird little bug with texture replacer. For some reason, the first time you load it up, it's fine, and then after that point, not so much. Everybody's faces disappear into a strange pink void. So I've played this a little bit already. I was just messing around with it, and then I thought, well, you know what, this is probably good for a stream or two, so yeah. So how is everybody? We've got Brett and LaFeel in the chat there already. There's a couple more of you watching as well. You'll have to let me know what the sound levels are like. I've hopefully set them more or less correctly. Although we should be getting... Yeah, I did turn the music slider up. It's just, okay, it's not playing any right now. So what I've done so far is I've managed to achieve orbit. I'll show you, I'll give you a very quick rundown of the very few craft I have designed. I've basically been to orbit and back. So we've got the, I don't know why I called them this, the Pigeon 1, which was my very first craft. There's a couple of SRBs. Actually, that's not quite the very first version of the Pigeon 1, which was just the smallest SRB on top of with a capsule on top. The Pigeon 2, which is my first liquid-fueled rocket. That does suborbital hops. And then the Pigeon 3, which can actually make orbit. Now I've got, because tourist contracts have started popping up already, I've got passenger versions as well, which is basically doubling up with the command pods. This is where tweak scale comes in very, very useful, because the difference between this and the regular Pigeon 3 is that the solid rocket boosters are tweak scaled to be a bit bigger. Because I've only just unlocked, yeah, I have done it. I've only just unlocked the VAB to surpass the initial 30-part limit, because you do start off with quite a sharp limit. So that's upgraded. I don't think the spaceplane hangar is yet. The launch pads had its first upgrade. The runways had its first upgrade. So money hasn't really been an issue, but also some of these upgrades aren't particularly expensive. I might have done the astronaut complex as well. Yeah, I think I've done the first upgrade for the astronaut complex, and R&D isn't. The tracking station, that's up by 1. Mission control, I think that's up by 1 as well. Planes, I've got a couple of designs again, just things I've designed to meet various needs. The first one I actually made was this. I don't know why I ended up with this slightly strange looking gull wing design. It doesn't serve any practical purpose, but there it is. It's actually kind of tricky to land this and the CH-20, basically because the bicycle landing gear is still kind of buggy. Unless you touch down at really quite low speeds, it just tends to explode. But if you're touching down at really low speeds, then your plane is stalling, depending on the plane design. So this one and the up-engined version, which is basically the same thing, but can go a bit faster. Yeah, they are tricky to land. And then I decided I need something that would be a bit easier to land, because I do have a specific contract for landing and getting temperature surveys. So thus was born this thing. And again, tweak scale came in very, very useful with getting the larger landing gear, so it's less likely to tail strike as it's setting down. But it does look awfully ungainly. The good thing is, though, that it can set down at very low speeds. How's the sound, by the way? Let me know. So let's have a quick look at the contracts. I've done the initial orbital ones. I think I've got a contract for, yeah, for doing a flyby of the Mun. We're definitely going to do that during the course of the stream. But I thought we might start off with combining two flying contracts. We've got one for doing temperature surveys on the surface, and we can combine that with hauling an LY-10 landing gear into flight. So we're going to make a small modification. Yeah, it's not a pretty plane. It's definitely not a pretty plane, but it's functional. It does what I need it to. I basically wanted something very lightweight. It's only about, I mean, it's not the lightest plane I've ever made, but it's only approaching 3.4 tons. It's not a heavy aircraft. I wanted something that could comfortably be powered by a single Juno engine, and that would be decent for landing on rough ground, essentially, because my faster aircraft absolutely cannot. They just can't do it at all. So the first thing we need to do is slap on one of these on, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. We'll just slap it on the back of the fuselage there. Obviously we want to start retracted, that's fine. It's a really simple contract. It's literally just get it in flight. And that's not massively messing up my aerodynamics or anything sat there, I don't think. So the other thing we need is, it was a temperature sensor, wasn't it? Yes. And what we're going to need is a communitron. Which of these uses the most energy? I think they're functionally the same. Yeah, they have the exact same transmission rate. I can still tweak scale them, but the thing is I don't have batteries yet, so that's a bit awkward. So where can we, let's stick it on the other side actually. If something happens that we're hitting the ground enough to break my communitron antenna, then yeah, something's gone pretty badly wrong at that point. So lastly, yes, an actual thermometer. What I could do, I could literally just slap 3 thermometers on it, because it's 3 separate. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll slap 3 thermometers on. We have the parts count. Actually, there we go. That's a lot easier than I mean, you can have the pilot hop out and get the data from a thermometer, but it's actually, no, we'll do that. We'll save cost. You know what, we'll just have the 1 thermometer. We can have them pop out and get that and then collect the data, because it'll be 3 separate lots of data, I think. It doesn't matter that we don't have any ladders, because they can get out, be hanging on the side, grab the data and get back in. Right, I think this should work. Oh yeah, this is, I should actually show you where I am with the tech tree right now, because I'm not just gathering all the science unless it's specifically telling me to do so in a contract. I have done extremely little so far. This is all I have unlocked. So this is the thing that really slows it down. You can, of course, in the difficulty settings when you're starting a new career mode, also use the sliders to determine how much science you're getting, how much funding you're getting, how much reputation you're getting, and various other things as well. But this is more a kind of Scouts Honour sort of deal, I suppose. So let's get this launched. We'll have to remember to peel the extra bits off afterwards, but that shouldn't be a problem. Oh, I do actually have another mod. I completely forgot about it, and I can't be bothered putting it in the title now. But atmospheric autopilot. But that one sort of barely counts. It's basically an extended stability assist, but specifically for planes. Should we go with Bob Kerman? Because he can reset experiments. Doesn't matter that he's not a pilot. Right, so let's get this launched. I'm assuming the sound is okay. You might have already forgotten how to dock and you haven't played in a while. Well, that is one of the slightly trickier things, although once you get the hang of it, it's actually not that bad. Right, this thing we need to do is... oh, these are all super close. We could actually... I was thinking I'd have to fly for these, but we might even just be able to taxi. I think we might just be taxiing, to be quite honest. Well, that has set the marker, right? Yeah, I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll have to fly, but I don't have rovers yet. We don't have the parts for rovers. So this is even going to be flying. This is just me going to be taxiing, really. Although we do need to fly as part of the contract. So you know what, we'll fly and then we'll get a bit closer and set it down. And also make sure I've got the atmospheric autopilot on. Now it does wobble a bit on the runway. That's purely due to the peculiarities of landing gear in KSP. But there we go, that's a comparatively low takeoff speed. You can immediately throttle right down, and that should be... I can find the right tab. There we go, so we've got that contract already, so that's fine. So this is, it's great, this the atmospheric autopilot mod. It makes flying a much more stable experience. Should probably throttle up a bit. I don't want to stall out, but this thing can fly fairly slow. I have managed more than one Jingles landing already when I've been playing this. Right, this shouldn't be too difficult. Toggle the brakes on. Not coming down too hard. There we go. The only difficulty is you've got to be careful you don't... Like, if you're coming down a bit too fast, it tends to wobble a bit much, and then it will pitch over and the wings tend to fall off, which is not really ideal. Right, so it's that way. Looking for... Whoop, I think we missed the marker. Oh, do you mean swept as in kind of like... is it cantilevered? I can't remember. In real life, it does make a big difference depending what you do with how you tilt your wings. Planes that you want to have this is like the Harrier is a really good example. That's got very sharply. Is it cantilevered? I can't remember, but it's got. Was it? Oh my God, I can't remember the exact word now, but because it's meant for short takeoffs and landings, it's theoretically better for low speed things, whereas for really high speed applications you want very thin, sharply swept back wings. But I'm no expert on aerodynamics, not even slightly, not even a little bit. And I don't think with the stock aero model of KSP it does make that big of a difference. If you're using something like Ferrum Aerospace, and I don't even know if that's an up-to-date thing with KSP these days, although it probably is, then that will theoretically make a big difference there. Is it like anhedral and dihedral, something like that? I honestly can't remember, but there are words to describe whether they are kind of in a downwards V or an upwards V kind of thing. I've no idea what kind of aerodynamics my my gull wing design has. I mean, that has been used once or twice in real life for carrier aircraft to overcome the limitations of the fact that an aircraft carrier is quite cramped, and it gives more wing area without necessarily having a massively increased wing span. Hey, Menthol. Right, we should be close to this. I suspect because these are quite close contracts. It'll flash up on the screen, it'll tell me when I'm close enough, theoretically. Yeah, it's not a pretty aircraft. Oh, there we go. Oh, and I've blown up the engine. I hit the wrong thing. I hit the wrong thing. Yeah, we might have to recover this. We can at least get this first. I've just realised I've put two... we're off to a good start. Yeah, I meant to hit the brakes and I tipped the plane back instead, and that was good. But we can at least do the first part. Log temperature. Keep experiment. So we don't even have to do... Well, we could be doing this if I was trying to reuse this, but that's fine. So that's one part, but we still have two others to do. But yeah, we're going to have to recover that because we may have slightly knackered the engine.
Jedi.
Brett with the Twitch Prime resub, thank you very much. Yeah, it was quite appropriate, wasn't it? So that gives me a little bit of science, and we'll also get a little bit of science from the fact that I didn't point this out before, but I've got one of the admin strategies switching reputation for science, and the guy that was the original inspiration for this on Reddit ages ago, I think this was even before there was an admin building where you could have strategies for doing that, so he basically ran into a massive science bottleneck that I won't quite have the same issue with, just because I can always have that going and swap reputation for science, essentially. Right, so I do just want the one. There we go. And we can also ditch that landing gear at this point, which I don't think we could take it out again with that anyway, because we've fulfilled that contract at this point. So we'll do the same thing. Bob Kerman. And we'll just taxi over, basically. But yeah, that wasn't that wasn't great. We might try a very short hop. Oh, why is it still... Did that not count? No, why isn't it counted that? We only did the... I thought it did. Do we have to do all three in one go? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I'm slightly confused by that, and I thought I'd have done at least one part, but never mind. I think to play it safe, I will just taxi over there. Oh, we haven't ignited the engine yet either. That helps. Right, so I just have to remember it's not me tipping the plane back that I want to do. I want to hit the B button to... No! See, that was me not... I think we can revert that one. It's a tricky slope. partly is this landing gear as well. It's a little on the bouncy side. Right, this isn't even me having... we're just naturally getting a bit of roll here. I could do a top engine design, but then we'd be striking the tail instead. I mean, I suppose really what I could have done is a jet-powered kind of buggy, but that would involve designing a whole separate thing. I just needed to be, whoa, a little more careful. Okay, there we go. Right, we can throttle up a little bit now. It's fine. I was never worried. I mean, it's not KSP if things aren't exploding. Wait, what are you doing there? Well, no, plane, plane, plane. For goodness sake. This is rather too bouncy. You know, I bet it's... let's try toggling the torque. I think that might have something to do with it. Turn the torque off on the command capsule. So then we're just using the steering gear and the tail fin for steering, and we're not actually having the reaction wheels going on at the same time. I suppose I could have put the engine just on the back of this pod here. I mean, it didn't have to be the engine sticking out the back like that. Maybe it'd be better off with an airship. There are mods for that. There are mods that let you build airships. There was once upon a time mods that had anti-gravity devices as well. So you could build true pod racers and things like that, but I don't think that one's been updated in a long time. I could do a kind of a twin boom tail, but I was trying to keep the part count and the weight fairly low. And the V-shaped tail I had on the other design caused some aerodynamic peculiarities, although not nearly as much as the actual thing did. So I mean, technically I've having collected some science data already. Right, this time it's doing it properly, so we want to transmit the data, which we don't have enough so what we're going to have to do... Right, theoretically this should be fine as far as the contract is concerned. We might... I would have thought the 50 inherent electric charge you get from that would have been enough, but apparently not. Apparently it wasn't quite enough. I suppose that's, yeah. I suppose that's true, as long as it tells you it's done. Right, this time we've got a little tick mark next to it, so it has properly registered that we've done that, which it didn't do last time for some reason. Well, the electric will slowly fill up as I use the jet engine, but of course if I use the jet engine on the surface I'm accelerating all the while, which I don't necessarily want to do. One of the, and this is something I was going to point out at some point anyway, but one of the features of 1.6 that I was kind of alluding to at the start is the fact that we, without the need for mods, we now get data in-game about things like burn time. You get delta V figures. Stuff like Kerbal Engineer and MechJeb is still going to give you more data. But the fact there is now the basic data in-game available for everybody is fantastic. It's just a pity it's taken them this long to implement it, but it's great that it's finally there. So that was one of the big hurdles for new players, is not having a clue. You could go and look up, oh, it takes such and such amount of delta V to orbit Kerbin, but you've got no idea what that translates to in terms of rocket design if you're trying to figure it out from scratch. A high part count electric car. Well, is it still an electric car if it has a jet engine? Does it still count at that point? So maybe we can't zoom in a bit further for these rather close together objectives, but never mind. I didn't strictly follow the contract in terms of having gathered the data earlier when I didn't mean to, but it would be the temperature for Kerbin's shores either way, so it would be that little bit of science I got from it would be me getting that either way. No, don't you dare! Don't you dare! Don't you dare! Okay. Okay. We might have to tweak this design, you guys. Yeah, okay, we're going to do that then. For goodness sake. Right, for one thing, we're just going to get three separate... we're just going to get three separate thermometers for now. I don't know if I've counted the one that we got before, but anyway. It'd be awkward to move those fuel tanks because those fuel tanks are what these are attached to. I could theoretically move them under the wing, but that would involve... I don't know, let's just try that, see how that does. In real life, you wouldn't put a jet engine right in front of a tail fin, but in Kerbal, it doesn't really matter. If I put a wheel on the back, it won't ever be able to take off as a plane. Your wheels have to, your rearmost wheels have to be around the centre of mass. If they're too far forwards, the plane will just tip backwards on its own accord. Right. Yeah, you have to do them all at once. I think that's what it is. It won't let you do just one at a time. Right, we can do this. It's just we have to do so very carefully. Ah, okay, it's counting the thrust as being blocked by the tail plane. So yeah, that isn't going to work. So... Right, we're gonna have to redraw this one a little bit if I want to do this. Man, I thought this was gonna be like a nice simple thing to kick off with, but no, naturally not. This is KSP. You have to do masses of tweaking and whatever to get things to work how you want to. Right, no, we don't want one of the big ones. So just going to do two of the small ones. If we tuck them under the wings, I think the engine itself needs to be center of thrust. I don't want that to be even or coming out straight from the back of the aircraft. Do I just put some... I've got more than enough parts count for just... This is where tweak scale comes in useful, because I can just go boop. I suppose we could more... There's no reason we don't kind of merge those a lot more into the actual... don't have to be stuck out the side quite so much. I should record some audiobooks. Oh, that might be why my... No, wait, didn't I? No, no, that's not the case, Jabberwack, because I recovered one plane. The first attempt, we actually recovered the plane, and it still counted it as not having actually done even a part of the contract. So yeah, no, that's not the case. It wasn't that. No, we want to pull that back slightly, don't we? Was it just the two we had on the... I think it was. There's probably some hotkeys for that I don't know about. Sometimes they get in the way slightly when you're actually trying to change how things look. So we're going to want... like a little... Ooh, that's too big. A slightly box tail design. So that about 60%. Nope. Oh, I'm forever doing that. Right, that looks a bit wacky, but again, we'll tweak scale it. Put the authority limiter down by a fair bit there as well, because there's two of them. Or maybe in less than... 40%, that looks alright. It shouldn't be exploding the weight too much or anything like that. This is still going to be... This is actually slightly lower weight than before. Actually, maybe we'll set that a little higher. It's a bit strange looking, I know. Actually, they do look a little... Maybe we'll have them be 50%. I could just use some more of those scaled appropriately and stick on some elevons, but anyway. I don't feel so bad when I see other people fumbling with these. Right, that's going to need some straightening out. Just make sure they're deploying in the correct way. That's going to be pitch, and these are going to be yaw. Let's see what that's done to my aerodynamics. Right, my center of mass could do with being a little further back, so we can actually shift the engine itself rather further back, I suppose. I'll have to tweak the position of these as well. Right, that should be fine. I guess we'll find out. How's the stream been going so far? Well, we've already had an extremely simple task that has turned out to be not quite as simple as I thought it would, mostly because of my design. So, one quick bit of redesigning later. Let's see how it flies, actually. Right, we want that turned on. We're still, I think, a fairly lightweight plane. I don't know what we'll have done to the fuel efficiency. Whoa. Yeah, I see you trying to wobble from side to side. Come on, take off. Okay, I've done something wrong there. I suppose we could do a separate rover. Is there an ejector seat? Maybe there should be. A small child playing on the wrong. Who knows? Right. I mean, it might just be these control surfaces aren't quite big enough. We might need to stick some more on the... Yeah, we definitely need to remember to toggle the torque off in the actual editor as well. That does make a difference. Right. I'm just curious to see how it flies now I've redesigned the aerodynamics of it. I mean, it looks a bit less fugly than it did before. But for some reason it wants to wobble around on the runway even more now. Right, we were able to take off previously at these kinds of speeds, but now not so much. So I think we could do with more... Wait, was that just... I can never quite tell with the... Because there's a bug that was around for ages and ages with anything you used as flaps, where you might set it to extend in one direction in the editor, and then it would do the opposite thing once you actually load the plane up. But I think we do need another set. We might even just be able to steal that set. Or should I just... You know, let's just steal those ones and scale them down a little bit. Or is that too small? I don't know! There's always that process of trial and error in KSP, and sometimes it can take a while. Right, so we want them to be for pitch. And let's just check we're not... I'll tweak that a little bit further forward as well. It might be that that was a little bit too far back, in which case we weren't able to get off the ground because the wheels were in the wrong place. Yeah, the wings in KSP do for the most part, Tanku. If you want nicer looking wings, you have to use one of the procedural wings mods that are out there. Latika Mafia, I have already tweaked the spring and damper strength a bit. Right, see, that's not... Right, okay. No, that should be correct. Right, okay. No, I'm confusing myself now. There probably are mods to add monster truck wheels, but this is mostly unmodded. Once I get proper landing gear, I'm basically going to swap the landing gear on all of these. Right, why are we now not generating enough lift? I bet it's because the engine's on the top. Yeah, the engine being on the top does not seem to be working for me at all. Mass in the aerodynamics looks fine, but yeah, I don't know. The thing is, I need this to be a single engine design. So the engine, it might have to just stick out the back. This is tricky. I wasn't expecting this to be this tricky. How can I do this? I mean, I could just literally, which is kind of what we had before. It doesn't look great. Well, hopefully that won't count as obscured air intake. The gear is basically, that's all. I mean, we could tweak it up a slight bit, I suppose. That should all be... Oh. No, for goodness sake, game. There we go. That should all be basically sat on the ground. Angle the engine, so you mean go like that. That would be an interesting experience, perhaps. Let's see how this does. Probably not too much better. But we'll maybe take off the authority limiter on that. See if that helps. I'll have it pointed kind of slightly down towards the... Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, we might try that. Yeah, that's what we want to happen. You know what? It was working just fine before, and now we seem to have completely buggered it. Yeah, no, that was meant to happen. Because it needs to be capable of decent fuel efficiency and low speeds. I want something lightweight with one engine. And also low cost. Although at this point we're actually more expensive than the cost of this one. Although partly that's because I've got the three thermometers slapped on there. They're not especially they're not super cheap. Yeah, they're nearly 1,000 each. I think I'm just going to have to give up and have 2 engines. And we'll have to do it that way. Which is going to make it even more short range, but what can you do? Right, let's make these a tiny bit bigger, I guess. That's more lifting surface. Yeah, I suppose I could limit the max power of the engines, do it that way potentially. Right, is that going to be obscuring the output? I hope not. That should be fine. It gets tricky with the early, like once you get more parts available, it makes things a little easier, but yeah, the earlier scale stuff. I mean, I could literally with tweak scale, you know, we could have one much bigger engine, but that gets really expensive with tweak scale, and also it wouldn't be terribly efficient. But that's not what I'm going for with this craft. And we do also still have the 30 part limit for the hangar. That's not upgraded yet. Right, so maybe if that will lower the angle there slightly. Having to move the nacelles down a little, but that's fine. Of course, the downside is it's now much easier to strike the wings on the ground, but it's fine. We'll see how we do that. I might have to come and tweak this design again in future. Let's see how this does. You'd have to cling to the outside of this one. It can have a pilot and that's it. Oh, I might have forgotten to move the landing gear, but we'll see if it... I bet this doesn't work at all, but we'll see how we do. I mean, it looks nicer than the earlier version. Certainly give it that right. We should definitely be able to take off. I don't know why we're not. Well, gosh, there we go. That took a lot of effort. Right, I think that might be the landing gear. Yeah, that will almost certainly be the landing gear. It'll be simple, it'll be easy, just a couple of temperature scans. The takeoff speed was like double what it was previously. But I'm pretty sure that was just the effect of having the landing gear a bit too far back. Well, let's not go quite full throttle this time. $60. The previous design could take off at about 60. Come on. 70. Full throttle. 100 meters a second. Man, this barely wants to pull up. Right, if we max out the... Gosh, right, that's a lot faster than it used to be. Right, we'll make these ones, these elevons here, much bigger. That might help. I've kind of reversed the point of this plane, which was to be something that could do nice low speed everything, and now apparently that's not the case anymore. I don't know. Like, we'll give this temperature survey lark one more go, and at that point I think we'll just start designing a rocket. Because it's getting a bit ridiculous that it's taking this long just to get some temperature scans. It should not be taking this long. Right. What we can do is we can put a thrust limiter to about 10% just now, so I'm not going to accidentally go too fast. That's still super maneuverable though. Whoa! Can we... I don't think you can limit the steering response of the nose wheel. Moving the tail back a bit might give me... It still wants to do that. That's ridiculous. Come on. Come on, nose forwards. Hang on, let's try turning the torque back on. Yeah, there are mods if you want to have like propeller engines and the like. There are definitely mods for that. Oh, yeah, hang on, we need the marker, don't we? Ah, third time lucky. Or fourth or fifth or however many times it's been already. Right, it should be both engines limited. No, it's not both engines limited to 10%. That's why. Okay, I kind of assumed it would do both engines at 10% because when you do the flaps, it tends to do both at the same time. But apparently that's not the case. That would be why we were going in circles, because we had massively uneven thrust. Well, the reason for large wing surface area Litikamafi is because that's what you want for a craft that can do low speed stuff. I wanted this to be able to go and land in rougher spots, which the original version could. I might just need to revert to the original version once I get better. This landing gear is all over the place. Once I get better landing gear, once I get the retractable landing gear, because this landing gear is particularly wonky. It's rather famous for it. Right. Slam on the brakes. Log temperature number 1. Yep, totally the landing gear max cal, nothing to do with me. Oh, did it automatically go on to the next one? I don't know. Maybe? I have one final runway upgrade available, which makes it a bit smoother. Although in terms of flat areas of Kerbin to land on, this is about as good as it gets. Most of the rest of Kerbin is like that, which you can land on, but you have to have a craft that's capable of landing at very low speeds without stalling. Which is a lot easier if you have mods that give you turboprops and the like. Hell, if you can build yourself a VTOL aircraft, that's the most ideal solution. But those are incredibly hard to control in KSP. Not that they're easy in real life either, of course. Right, so a little bit of throttle so we're not slowing down. It does change your aerodynamics a bit, Foo. Once upon a time it was just a lift surface. These days it does change your aerodynamics a bit, but the aerodynamic model in KSP is still somewhat simplified. Hey Ginge, you've missed a couple of explosions already. Mostly it's me failing at planes so far. I think part of the thing with landing gear is down to Unity. I mean, people were hopeful once they upgraded to... God, I can't even remember what version of Unity the game runs on now, but they did a massive port from... Oh, I can't even remember. Is it from going from 1.1 to 1.2? They essentially changed what the game runs on from an older version of Unity to a newer one, and people were hopeful that would finally fix the landing gear solution issue, but doesn't seem to have. I think I might have to revisit this design because those wings are much too likely to bash them on the ground when trying to land on rougher ground. Alehouse Gaming, that's Max's channel these days on Twitch. Oh, also, we can get our next... There we go. Log temperature. It does. It automatically, as we're on this contract, it's automatically switching the marker to the next one, so we don't have to do it ourselves. Okay, that is a new thing. I don't know if that's new for 1.6, but given that I substantially haven't touched the game in like a year or more, new enough. Right, we might actually do it this time. It's getting a bit dark, actually. Let's turn the cockpit light on. Not that it's actually going to illuminate anything, but... Whoa, a bit fast, bit fast, bit fast. Apply a little bit of brake. Doesn't seem so fast, but if you hit a bump just wrong, it's going to do bad things. This is still, someone else can look it up, but 12 meters a second is still actually reasonably fast. You know, if you're going that in a car, I can't even remember how many miles an hour it is, but it's fast enough. Right, here's our final and last observation. Log temperature, and I think that automatically completes the contract. And we could go back to the runway, but we'll just recover right there. Hooray! We did it! It only required multiple redesigns of a really simple aircraft. Oh no! Global warming! Yeah, this happens sometimes. I think it's the... is it environmental visual pack? Or I can't remember what the mod is called, but one of the visual mods. It occasionally wigs out. You can do boats in KSP. You can even do submarines. Oh, also with the science we got from both the little bit of data gathered and also the completing the contract, that gives me another node. Now, I've been thinking I might quite like this one, particularly because I can get the Rockomax adapter. And I can start using tweak scale with things a bit more. And also get the launch stability enhancers. This would also be really useful for doing the moon shot. And we also get a bigger fuel tank. But we're playing with limitations here. This is kind of what it makes it interesting. Not as many limitations as we would be facing if we weren't using tweak scale as well. But yeah. Oh, we could actually see what other contracts have popped up, because if you complete a contract it does make another one. And I was going to change the flag and I completely forgot. We'll just go with the bog standard Saltire. Right, so we're starting to get rescue contracts, but I can't really do those yet. Without MechJeb, I totally suck at... No, those are all high-level surveys. I totally suck at doing any kind of orbital rendezvous stuff without the aid of MechJeb. That's the one thing I just cannot get my head around. Right, so I'm going to get some more water, but I want to see some suggestions in the chat for my first moonshot design. And if I don't see any decent ones, then I guess we're just calling it the Pigeon 4.
So be it, Jedi.
Faithless Buddha with the Twitch Prime sub, thank you very much. And we don't have that limitation in the VAB anymore. The VAB has been upgraded, so we are up to 255 parts and 140 tons. We don't yet have the final upgrade though. That's going to be pretty expensive, so I can't do action groups. A space elevator is out of the question, sadly. Yes. Right. Oh, I don't know why it typed that into. I mean, I was okay. I was trying to change the, but I guess you can't if there aren't actually any parts. The Liberator. Well, I'm just gonna go with the Pigeon 4. Because, yeah. This is what's delivering my internet. This is what's delivering my rockets. So, sure, why not? Alright. Immediately dump the monoprop. Question is, do I want to make this a twin Kerbal design, which wouldn't strictly be adhering to... I mean, the contract just literally says fly by the mun, so we won't be putting any science instruments on it. I guess we'll just have a single command capsule to eliminate weight, because we don't... Oh no, we do. We have a crew cabin now. But it gives me no benefit to haul a crew cabin up there. I do need a crew cabin design at some point. I'll probably rejig one of these rather ungainly looking ones. Though I think a crew cabin is a bit more weighty than one of those. So that's actually a more efficient design for having one of those than one of those. But that can carry 2 Kerbals. Anyway. That's for another time though. So as it's just going to be a single one, we can go with the standard Mark 16 parachute. We'll want, I guess, a Communitron, not that it really matters. We could even have a really huge Communitron that just has an absurd range, but that might be a bit big. I really wish tweak scale was part of the default the game. I think the game would be so much better for it. Right, heat shield. From coming back from orbit, you need very little. For coming back from the mun, it's going to be a much hotter return. So, like, I don't know. Do we just go for the whole thing? But it does make a difference. It's 1.2 tons with maxed ablator. Without it, we're just over 1 ton. So that's 200 kilos. I guess we'll go with it because we're just literally sending an astronaut around and having them come back again. I could be fancy and have a radiator panel as well. Or a whole bunch of radiator panels. That actually looks kind of interesting. But maybe not terribly practical. And yes, we are going to tweak scale that. That's a bit on the big side. What was the thing that looked a bit like a Lancaster? What's the context for that question? A thing I made? It won't have been in this this particular career. This is a new career I'm doing all this contract stuff on. Or do you just mean generally? B-24. Oh yes, yeah. It was a 4-engined bomber, I suppose. It kind of might be said to vaguely resemble one. Right. Coupling. We need a decoupler. That's fine. Yeah, that had tricycle landing gear as well. Right. The upper stage. Now this is the part where not having mods anymore, mods at the moment, is actually not really a hindrance these days. Let's do that one. Because I can see that's going to give me 836 meters a second of delta V. Now I can't actually remember offhand. I'm going to look this up. I can't remember what you need to get to the mun and back. come into orbit is oh, let me look it up on because this one just about gets to orbit. It's about 3,000. Can't remember. Bearing in mind it's probably less with efficient launches, but I don't do efficient launches. Other propeller engines, you can make propeller engines, but you have to bodge the game a bit, and it's slightly awkward, to say the least. Right, to do a flyby, I think we need a little bit more. I don't think that's going to be enough for the upper stage, so we maybe use FTL 200, nearly 1200 Delta V. Oh, I quite like that. Let's have that. That should be more than enough. We could actually increase that a little bit by lowering the ablator, but I honestly can't remember offhand how much ablator we need. It's only about 60, 70 meters a second Delta V. And this is just a moonshot. This is just a flyby of the moon, so we don't need to actually capture into the moon's orbit or anything. I can't remember which one's which now. Oh, that's a bigger one. Okay, that's fine. It's actually quite useful that we have a bigger decoupler now, because although we don't have any bigger tank parts, we do have the adapter, and that's the point where oh, that's quite nice. Let's see if we can match that with some scaled up FTLs. Now the fact I'm scaling up is going to be hideously expensive. Should we just do a classic 3-stage rocket? I guess so. It's going to want to be an LTV 45. I think we're going to have to scale this up as well, and this is where it starts to get... Yeah, this is not going to be the cheapest launch, especially compared to using... what would one of those be? 1120. Just to do the same thing. Right, so that's going to give me 1400 meters a second, and then we just need something to give us a kick off the launch pad, basically. So yeah, this is where tweak scale comes in handy, because once you've gotten the proper sized parts, you could basically have them for much less money, or well, less money, and in case of engines, better efficiencies. You might even want to put a thrust limiter on that a bit. That's still nearly a TWR of 2, that's fine. Hell, maybe I don't even need that wee tank, but I guess we'll see. Same thing again. This time I guess 3 of these. And it'll have to be a swivel again, because we need the vector control. Right, so 28,000, that's actually not terrible overall. But it would be less expensive to use the proper parts, as it were, for the actual design. I think think that's enough delta V to get me into orbit. We could theoretically stick more delta V on this upper stage. I might actually swap back in a slightly bigger tank. This is probably a little more expensive, a little more delta V than there needs to be, but that should work. Let's just check we've got the staging correct before we actually launch the thing. There's the capsule. Okay, so who are we going to have first? We can have Jeb or we can have Valentina. I don't think Bill has done anything yet. Poor Bill, he's not even flown in a plane, he's just been sat back at the KSP cooling his heels. Well, I think I picked Valentina as the first into space, so we'll pick Jeb as the first to fly around the moon. We'll see how we go. I'm a little rusty at this, and especially doing this without Mech Jeb. I can do it, but we're kind of at the limit of my abilities. It's, yeah. It's the taking off part that I find tricky. So, let's give this a go. Mun or bust. It's a very quiet rocket, all things considered. We can also pop out the rocket stages so we can monitor things like delta V, burn time and all that good stuff. We probably could have slapped on some SRBs to get a bit more kick off the pad, but frankly this seems fine so far. Another 30 seconds until we get to the second stage. You basically start turning from the beginning these days. It didn't used to be the case, but throttle back a little. Getting a little bit of wobble. We don't have any of the mods that improve that let you weld parts together or anything, although you can do a little bit of that yourself with the auto strutting. Throttle up. Now, this is the stage that's going to get us into orbit. Let's get our outputs to about 75. There we go. Got the main engine. That is an orbit, and we have managed to actually get a 0 degree inclination orbit as well, which I don't always manage to do. Oh, this is another new feature I should point out if you haven't played the game for a while. Not only do you get this information, but, and again, this is inspired by mods. There have been mods that have done this for a long time, but you get much more accurate information just built into the game that tells you when to start your burns to nodes. There used to be a little bit of guesswork involved. And I used to let MechJeb basically handle all my burns because MechJeb would know exactly when to start and stop. So we're going to use all of this stage with orbital circularization. It wasn't a particularly efficient launch, I don't think. This is why I let MechJeb do my launches. It's a lot more consistent than I am. But that's not an option at the moment, so I'm having to do it the old-fashioned way. Yeah, I know, it's built into the game now, Latika Mafia. No need for any kind of mods whatsoever. This isn't really great lighting for a screenshot, sadly. The Astronomer's visual pack does look very, very nice. I think this is with the 8K textures, although the clouds are the default size, whatever they are. So there's a little bit of a contrast between the clouds and everything else. So that little bar there, I don't know how visible that is at 720p, but that tells me exactly how much delta V I'm getting out of each stage. So then we stage on to the last one, and that takes me into orbit. Oh, I might need to do a tiny little burn to... Yeah, we're still technically suborbital at the moment. To push me above 70. Right, so we have achieved orbit. It's not quite a nice circular orbit, but that's fine. The question is, actually, that's a good question. Is that debris going to fall back of its own accord? Yes, it is. At this point, I'm going to pop a quick save. We have loads of delta V. I remember it being about 900 meters a second to break orbit from Kerbal and then get to the moon's sphere of influence. And I think we probably have somewhere in between the amount needed to get to the moon efficiently and actually get into orbit around the moon. I don't think I've got quite enough to orbit around the moon. So this is... I could probably be carrying a little less fuel in this upper stage, and this is me absolutely doing things a little roughly. Right, so, oh, there's an encounter. Which would fling me out quite wide, potentially. Right, that might be a bit too wide, or is that the second time round it would fling me round? Right, that looks all right. Let's have a roundabout. Whoa, it's not too far past. We just need to literally get into the moon's sphere of influence. Right, let's go for that. I can't tell the pilot to lock onto the node yet. They're not quite skilled enough. I've got the retrograde and prograde skills at least. So there's about 30 minutes until that burns. So what we can do is just skip ahead. This is one of the nice features of the Astronomer's Visual Pack. You get an Aurora Borealis on the appropriate planets. And an Aurora Australis as well. Right, I wonder if I start fiddling with the thrust limiter, because at the moment we have an absolutely massive TWR of 5.5, which makes it a little hard to control. Does it? Yeah, it does. It on the fly changes the burn time that you need. So I'm going to put the thrust limiter down to 50% there. Just a slight, it's still nearly a TWR of 3, but it's a bit less of a kick in the pants. Jebediah always looks like he's stoned. Why do you think he eats so many snacks? That looks quite nice. Although I probably shouldn't turn off the UI when we're this close to, you know. But it does. It looks nice. It's a little bit of a faff getting the Astronomer's Visual Pack installed, but I think it's worth it. You even get like, I think it's supposed to be lightning storms, but once you're over the dark side. The light areas, of course, are meant to represent urban centres, but it all falls apart slightly when you get close to them on the ground. So, nearly there. 20 seconds to go. So how's everybody... I normally interact with the chat a little more than this, but how's everybody in the chat doing? We're reaching that stage where we're waiting for things to happen whilst doing rockety things. I was a bit preoccupied when I was designing planes and rockets and things, but now we're actually flying the rockets and things. I have a little more time to chat. I do suspect this design, it won't take too much adaptation to... we'll see what kind of fuel we're left with afterwards, but in terms of...
so be it, Jedi.
Actually something that can get into an orbit around the moon. I think we're part of the way there anyway. Isham Gamer with 14 months in a row. Thank you very much. Well, let's skip ahead a little. We can see the planet retreating behind us. One of these days I do want to try out like a real scale install. I've never done that. I've never played around with real scale stuff, and maybe not even necessarily like real fuels, because you can get all that kind of thing in KSP if you want. You can have realistic things like you've got to worry about cryogenic boil off and all this kind of thing. And ullage. We actually see it yet, or is it in the sun? No, it'll be around on this side. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, can we see it yet? Yeah, there it is. Let's warp ahead till we're about to pass into the sphere of influence. I do have to keep a little eye on the electric charge, but just the internal reaction wheels alone don't consume a lot, and I don't need to use it when I'm actually up here. We're not manoeuvring to get into orbit or anything. But until we get batteries, that's an inherent limitation. So this is the one we're interested in. Fly by the Mun. We don't even have to take any observations, which is a pity, because that would be nice to get the science. But because we're obeying the contracts, there we go. Mun sphere of influence. How close will we actually get? Not that close. Let's walk to periapsis. We'll see what Jeb can see. Not a lot, because it's the dark side. Well, we might be able to... Wait, what's the controls I want right now? That way. clip the craft end on end. There we go. Have a nice little view of the Mun outside the cockpit window. And if you're thinking that looks like a higher res Mun than you're used to, then again that is the Astronomer's Visual Pack. So, now comes the bit where we actually have to get him home. I think the next set of kind of guaranteed contracts that pop up will be... It'll either be orbit or actually landing somebody. And we can have a go at that. So, at this point, we want to pro ourselves retrograde. We're already intersecting with the atmosphere, so what we can do is we can burn a bit of... we've got quite a bit of delta V left. I was going to check how much it was circularized and I forgot. Yeah, we'll drop another quick save there. Basically get a lot closer. I always love these kind of, you know, you're just watching it get closer and closer. Those kind of shots are always nice. Right, considering it's a Mun return, we'll probably be coming in a little on the hot side, but this is why we have all this ablator. Jebediah can tell us all about what he saw when he went to the Mun and back. Right, we can do a little bit of braking. It's going to make our ascent through the atmosphere that much steeper, but we have so much ablator it doesn't really matter. Just want to bleed off some speed so our entry through the... nobody saw that. I didn't accidentally arm the chute. It's fine. Nobody saw that. Fortunately, you can disarm. And I don't think it would have tried to deploy anyway.
Your business is appreciated.
Well, let's keep an eye on how much ablator is getting used. Because we're almost certainly carrying way more ablator than we actually need. Oh, Jebediah will be fine. This is nothing. It's fine. See, he's having fun. He's having a great time. God, does anybody remember the... Did I even... I had the radiators and then I forgot to even turn them on, but I think having them turned on actually uses up electric. So you know what, the radiators were entirely useless. But they look cool, right? Does anyone remember one of the very first streams I did? And this is going back for like 3 years ago, for the very first KSP stream. And I had somebody accidentally, I clicked the EVA button instead of the view button whilst we were coming back through the atmosphere. Bob Kerman, that was it. Yeah, that was one of the derpier things I've ever done. Side mission successful. We really didn't need that much ablator. We can cut that in half and still have a fairly sufficient margin, even without having the braking. Deploy. There we go. Deploy now, please. Okay, so spacebar wasn't working. Yeah. I think because I accidentally deployed and then kind of repacked. See, this is why I hit F5 earlier on. It's fine, that was just a simulation to see what would happen if something went wrong. Yep. It's fine. We were testing. We were just testing. Right, where the heck am I? Just testing, you guys. Just testing. Yep. For some reason the cloud textures aren't displaying as they should be. Slightly interesting. I guess because I've quick saved. Oh, there we go. Okay, now that's wigged out. That looks super weird. Let's just enjoy that effect for a moment. That is, yeah, that's a little bit odd. Oh yeah, that's what it was. I wanted to try out the radiators. That's exactly it. I was just testing. God, okay, they do train very quickly when you've only got a limited amount of battery power. We might try turning one on when we're actually coming down, but I don't think it's even worth it. It doesn't make enough of a difference. That looks super weird. Right, there we go. We've kicked in with one of the closer res modules. Textures. Actually, let's try it without the braking this time. I won't regret this. We've got so much ablator. It's fine. He'll be fine, he says, making sure he's got the radiator panels available just in case. KSP is like, you actually can learn to understand the basics of spacecraft and orbiting in a way that you just kind of can't with looking at it on a page. That's why video games are in a way so good, because you can learn stuff by doing. I don't know why Jebediah now has a mustache and goatee. I'm sure he didn't before. He's pulling some much higher G-forces here as well, but I don't think that that particularly troubles him. Right, we had a bit of heating there without slowing down a bit, but not enough to really be a concern. We also haven't accidentally triggered the parachute this time, but to make sure we'll have that pinned, just to be on the safe side. And even with that hotter re-entry, we still only used about 20 ablator. It's because it's a relatively shallow re-entry. If it's a more long, drawn-out re-entry, then you actually end up using a lot more, even if you're decelerating slower. Sometimes a shorter, hotter entry is better than a longer one. And this time it worked. And we definitely made sure. Oh, we can turn off SAS, I think. So I'm sure this capsule will end up in a Kerbal museum somewhere. The first one to go around the moon. So yeah, KSP though, if it's half off at the moment, I would highly recommend it. The range of mods is at this point quite incredible. I mean, if you just want to putter around in orbit and build space stations, you can do that. If you want to explore the entire solar system, you can do that. If you want to explore an actual full-sized solar system with realistic rocket motors and fuels, you can do that. There are mods for that. You can have life support to worry about and have all the logistics and supplies side of thing added through mods. I think there's a very basic form of life support in the game at the moment, but if you run out, it doesn't actually kill them. So yeah, there's all kind of cool things. So there's various future technologies mods that up to and include faster than light drives. Or you can just spend the entire time building aeroplanes with the Ferrum Aerospace enabled for more realistic aerodynamics. You can do that. Right, we got a whopping 12 science out of that flyby, and we also got a decent amount of science out of the reputation out of that, and a nice chunk of funds. And Jebediah will have gotten some XP, although he's not quite at the next level yet. So, right, the only existing ones I've got are ones I can't actually finish yet because I don't have the big enough engines. Right, test a heat shield splashdown at Kerbal. That one's quite easy. We can do that. Tourist contract. Orbit and a suborbital space flight. Test a decoupler landed at Kerbal. Explore Kerbal. Park 2 vessels next to each other around Kerbal. What could possibly go wrong? Rendezvous 2 vessels in orbit. We'll take it, but I don't think we're going to be doing that one anytime soon. Because me trying to do that without the aid of MechJeb is going to be exceedingly difficult. Not something I would try and do on stream because it would just take too long. Oh, these are all... Okay, these ones... We'll take this one. These are all... below. Above means generally you need a high altitude craft. And you need much later parts to do those, really. Well, just check, though, because sometimes they can put them really far away. Right, we are... Where are we? We are there. No, we're around here. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, they're actually really close to KSP. So we'll take that contract. See you, Foo. You can build FTL engines, and it sort of... I'm not sure how it does work, to be honest. I think it basically jumps you to a copy of the same system. It doesn't take you to a new star system or anything. It was that one, wasn't it? This will be a good way to... Yeah, funds mostly, but... a tiny bit of science. Let's get a little bit of science from each of the parts, and then... yeah. Talking of science, we can actually unlock another node. Oh no, we can't because it's 45, so we need a bit more science. Might actually do that flight contract just now then. Reaction wheel, MechJeb case. I don't think MechJeb's actually working at the moment, but I'm not sure. Science Junior, experiment storage units. Batteries. Batteries are definitely a thing that we need. But this engine is also going to be super useful if we're going to now be doing stuff away from Kerbal. We might go for this one next, just for the Terrier, because it's a very efficient vacuum engine. So while I remember, I'm going to just tweak that ablator. And and strip off those radiators, which are entirely unnecessary as it turns out. So yeah, that very nearly, I think, could go into orbit around the Mun. It would need a bit more oomph. Like stick some solid rocket boosters around the base, a bit more fuel in that top stage, and I think maybe that could easily go to the Mun and orbit. But we're not going to do that until we get a contract for it, because that's the entire point of this playthrough, of this career mode. Right, which plane do we take? That's a good question. Let's go with my faster one. It's just a slightly ungainly looking beast, but it'll do. Right, these are quite close, so this won't take too long. Yeah, we'll go for that one first. And as a nice feature, if I bring up... Oh, I have to turn it on first. I can do things like set what altitude I want to be flying at and such like things. But we'll actually have to get up to that first. So yeah, this is also not a particularly heavy craft, but we've got bigger fuel tanks on this one, so it's got much more endurance. And the optimum altitude is, was it around 9,000 meters? In terms of fuel efficiency versus speed. So what we can do is, oh, if I go there, it's a really nice feature. I can just go, I want to, oh, I need to stick us onto cruise flight, don't I? Go that waypoint there, and it will fly me towards it, and it even tells me how far away I am. We can also set our... so if we're flying at lower altitudes, at the thicker part of the atmosphere, you get the... You're fighting against more atmosphere, basically, so the higher up, in a way, the better. If I set it for about 5,000... And it automatically now will just... It's basically a kind of basic autopilot. It's a really handy mod. Now we definitely have some time to chat. Because, yeah, we're just flying over there. We're flying between these 3 points and doing observations. And then we have to fly back. So this one might take a little time. There's a reason why people don't do aerial contracts on streams all that often. Is it safe to rewind? How do you mean? Using F5 and F9? I think as long as you're not very close to the ground, it should be fine. You do have to re-enable it if you hit F9, because it isn't on by default. But yeah, unless you're very close to the ground or in the middle of a stall, it's not really going to be an issue. So yeah, I'm hands off the controls at the moment. We're still getting some shock effects. Heck, we could even be a bit higher than this. Oh, no, that's 700, not 7,000. Wrong way. Not that fuel efficiency and engine efficiency and any of the rest of it actually matters, but yeah. It's not a terrible looking plane. I'm not displeased with the look of this plane. But once I get some proper landing gear, it'll look a bit better and be a bit more aerodynamically efficient. But I wouldn't like to try and fly it for an extended period without the autopilot. Even with stability assist, it's a bit of a pain. Or the time multipliers. You mean if I go and do this? Oh yeah, it doesn't like using more than ×2 in atmosphere, does it? Well, nothing's exploding. It appears to be fine. It's not really having any issues. It's not a particularly high part count plane anyway. If you had a really high part count plane, it might have more issues. I don't know. But I shouldn't think it would be a problem. Now this is just crew reports we're sending back, so we don't have to worry about running out of battery life and storing reports and the rest of it. Hell, if I wanted to really save time, I could literally just have Jeb bail out of the plane and parachute down to the surface and recover him. But that would be a bit wasteful in terms of funds. Oh, right. We have to... where's the button? Crew report. There we go. So there we go. Crew reports don't take up a lot of electric charge, fortunately. So then what we do is we pick our next target. The autopilot will just bring us around, and it's all very nice and hands-off and not having to constantly fiddle with the controls. I could stick even more engines on this issue, and it would go even faster. It's a possibility. But it would mess with the centre of mass somewhat, and it would also start to really limit its fuel efficiency. Not that that really matters for flights like this. Yeah, I tend to, if there are contracts that make you fly halfway around the globe, I tend to just ignore those. Anyway, we can speed things up about a little bit again. This is actually not too bad with time warp. It's not too bad at all. You can even do things like control your airspeed. If there's a contract that requires you to be going at a specific airspeed to test a part, you can just set it on a compass heading. And there's a whole bunch more to this. Like there's a lot more detailed stuff in the autopilot mod besides. But I'm a scrub and I just use it for this. About 10 kilometers away. Somebody look it up. What is 318 meters a second? Right, that's our second of 3. And the third one is comparatively really close. Okay, so are we doing over Mach 1 then? That's not bad for Juno engines. Right, so I keep losing where the flag is. There it is. You know what? This took way less time than I thought, so we'll just fly back to the Space Center, and you get to have the hilarity of watching me try to land this thing. If we make it down with just a cockpit intact, then that'll be a decent... Oh, 711. Okay. That's still fairly fast, though. I think you could break the sound barrier with just Juno engines on a light enough craft, if you had enough of them. Oh, it's almost guaranteed to be a Jingles landing. I'll be highly surprised if I manage to do anything else. Well, ideally, the pilot is in the cockpit, Tanku. Also, we can probably drop our altitude a bit to... Let's go back down to 4,000, I guess. If the pilot is no longer in the cockpit, then something has gone wrong somewhere. Like me hitting the EVA button accidentally during re-entry. Hey, Latika Mathia, here's a thing, another thing, and I think I kind of mentioned this already, but the pilots themselves, the astronauts, now come with parachutes built in. There used to be, if you wanted a parachute, you had to mod that. But these days, nope. You want a parachute? Well, I could literally have Jebediah jump out of the plane and just parachute down to the ground and recover him, and it would obviously end things a little bit quicker, but I would be down one plane. We'll also start to reduce our speed a little bit. We are coming up on the Space Center rather quickly. Oh, you can still do that. You can still, yeah, I suppose, kill your speed and then literally just pop a bunch of parachutes so you float down to the ground. Because landing isn't that easy. It really isn't. Right, are we going to... Oh, should we be brave and actually try and nicely... no, we need to go back to standard fly-by-wire at this point. Let's try and line up for the runway. I would never try and land this on the island runway, but the earlier version of the smaller plane I actually did a test and was able to do it. It's fine. And you know what? We'll pop another quick save at this point, because we might have some interesting landings going on. Some interesting attempts at, yeah. Let's watch our altitude. We won't get too low just yet. I think speed-wise we're about where we want to be, so that's fine. Let's line up the final approach. Throttle down even more. Right, this looks okay-ish. It's the part where having air brakes or something would be quite useful. Yeah, we're slightly to the right of the runway. Well, the Dalai drama, if you get on your plane tomorrow at Luton and you hear my voice coming over the cockpit speaker, you might want to then get off the plane. Right, oh, it's fine. Whoa, oh, whoa, no, it's fine. We lost one of the landing gear, but it's fine. It's fine, we only need 2/3. And this is why I quick saved. Yeah. So you have to re-enable the fly-by-wire, but apart from that, it's fine. Right, let's do round 2 where we don't even bother with a runway. And just try and get the damn thing on the ground. You have to be, like, under 60 meters a second when you're setting this thing down. And because you don't have air brakes, because you don't have the ability to reverse the engine thrust, yeah, it's quite tricky. Fortunately, most of the ground here is nice and flat. Well, this is just Jebediah's, you know, his concentration face. Right, we're not going to smack into the obelisk or anything like that. Right, we need to bleed off a little more speed before the wheels actually touch the ground, I think. Whoa! Right, let's not slam on the brakes yet. Let's just I'm just applying a little bit of braking. Yeah, I really can't wait to get the better landing gear, because it's really tricky trying to land with the basic landing gear. It's an exercise in patience. Lots and lots of quick loading. I think I can actually just taxi back to the runway at this point, and then I get the full value of the returned plane. Apply a little more brake. I think 16 meters a second is probably a little too high. See, fine. It only took 2 attempts, which is practically like doing it on the first attempt with this. Right, we don't want to come at this from an angle. Nice and gentle. Whoa. We might need a bit of throttle up for this last bit. And perfect. There you go. A perfect landing. 100% fine. I mean, you know, of course. Why not? Sure. Right, that will be enough. There we go. That's enough science to get another node, though. Which is what we want. And I think we will go for the... Oh, we need both, though, really. We need the liquid, the Terrier liquid fuel engine. But I think maybe we need batteries more than we need that. Of course, what we really, really need is solar panels, but we don't get that until... gosh, there. So, yeah. I think solar panels might be the next thing we work towards. Alright, let's go for batteries. Let's go for that node. Because we can make do with the engines we've got, but we do need batteries as a thing. Jingles would be proud, yeah, I'm sure. 10 out of 10 with Jingles again. Test the small landing gear splashdown at Kerbal. We can take that. That's an easy one. What else can I do? These are all... We can do these tourist ones. That involves rockets and things going boom, hopefully. Hopefully not. 1.25 meter heat shield splashdown at Kerbal. That's one we can actually incorporate with one of these tourist contracts. So we'll do that next. Have I tried landing on the roof? Good lord, that would not be good for the VAB. It would absolutely not. So what I can do, the suborbital one is only for one of them, but we can redesign our orbital rocket, and we can control we can do both at the same time. And I think this should still be enough oomph with the little bit of extra weight I've just added on the rocket. Should be. Should be. We might want to up the size of the... these are currently scaled down a bit. We haven't added that much extra weight though. Oh, that's only one. That should be two. So yeah, we've got, what is it, 2 for going around in orbit and 1 that wants to just have a suborbital hop. Which is fine. Also, how is this the old flag? I don't know. There we go. Oh, I also removed the, not that it really matters, but I removed the Communitron antenna. I only had like a half-size one or something anyway. Was it like 75%? It wasn't full size. That's fine. So we need to basically land in the ocean and we can do that splashed down contract. There is also test LY10 landing gear. That's also a splashed down contract. So we could totally just stick a landing gear on the side of this. Obviously not extended. And hell, if I scale that down as well, this is just slightly cheating using MechJeb, not MechJeb, tweak scale to do this, but it's a small scale version, so it's got less of an impact on the weight. So theoretically this should be fine. Theoretically. So let's get both our tourists loaded in. Go to launch. I think after this one I should have enough money to upgrade maybe the admin building. Because if I can dump more reputational funds or something into, you know, converting that into science, then that would obviously speed things up. Let's angle a little bit off the pad. Make sure we've got our stages showing so we can see what delta V we're going through. Don't EVA the tourists. I don't think you even can. The flag looks a little wonky from a distance. I don't know why. Anyway, I don't think that's an option. Shoving the tourists out of the airlock. Oh, I think we're accelerating a little too fast at the moment, but that's... I can alter the, you know, what the liquid fuel engine's doing, but I can't do anything about the solid rocket boosters, of course. Right, we need to start coming over a bit actually at this point. Right, so the SRBs are about to run down. This is probably horribly inefficient, but we're already above the altitude we need to get to orbit with. Right, let's hope I've not completely messed up this launch and that I can in fact get into orbit. No, I can't. I don't have enough delta V. Let's restart that launch. I might need to tweak this design a little bit, just because I've added a little bit of extra weight. Also, you know what? Let's put some... It's having a bit of a wobble. We actually have the launch clamps available now, so we might as well add those. There's no reason not to. Make sure those are in the same stage. What can I can maybe kick up the SRB size a little bit. Gives me a little more oomph with those. I slide that up there and then I can slide these down a little. That looks about right. Right, that should be fine. Man, tweak scale, it's such a useful mod. It's such a useful mod. I swapped out some parts, Ed Beaver, so it's got slightly more weight on it now than it did before. Right, let's set the main engine at about 2/3. And we might want to come off the pad a bit more tilted than we were before. If you do it too much, you end up like, I've got somewhat limited atmospheric control of this, so we don't want to go too sideways too quickly. But yeah, I think my initial launch was a bit too parabolic. One thing I do miss from MechJeb, and you can also have the information in Kerbal Engineer, but you can have a window that tells you your kind of periapsis and all that kind of thing without having to swap back and forth between the orbital view and the rocket view. Which is very, very handy. Trying to keep tabs on multiple things happening at the same time. Right, I think this was a better ascent profile this time. It does make a big difference. It's not just the amount of delta V you're packing, it's the... Whoa! Okay. It's the... Ooh! We need to be above 1 TWR. It's not just the delta V, it's how you use it. Or something like that. And again, it would be useful to see that information when you're in this view. 50,000. How are we doing? I think this should do it. This is a much better looking ascent profile. It's probably still a bit messy, but there we go. We've got about 1,400. If I do it right, I'll only need about 900-ish. Right, oh, that's what, way too far. 83, 73, trim that a little more. Right, 1,100, but that's fine. We literally just need to get to orbit and then have enough delta V to get ourselves back down again. So this wasn't quite as efficient as it could be. This is one of the reasons why I prefer MechJeb for launching, because if I even manage to get into a 0-degree inclination orbit, sometimes that is hard enough. MechJeb's just way more consistent than I am. Despite the years of practice I've had at it, it's one thing I can't do well in this game. Okay, it was telling me I was needing to... Never mind. Seems to have changed its mind slightly. There we go. Oops, start the main burn. See all the tourists there enjoying the view. It's a good thing these space flights aren't being provided by Ryanair, because can you imagine what they would charge you extra for? Oh, you want oxygen? That'll be extra. Right, still a good 300 meters a second delta V left, and we are in orbit, so I think we've satisfied that. Yep, there we go. Ha! Apparently this single flight has also counted as a suborbital flight. Ah! I don't need to do those separately, I guess? I'm not sure why that is, but okay. Alrighty then. Oh, no, that's not the view we want. Have a look-see inside the... There we go. It's a slightly cramped cabin, but I'm sure the trolley service will be along soon to offer them snacks and an in-flight magazine. So, we just need to land in some water, basically. I guess there's no time like the present. That's a big old ocean we're passing over just now. Although, do we have enough of our orbital track left to... Let's play it safe and just come around the day side. We can have a slightly more controlled descent. Yeah, I suppose technically part of the flight was suborbital, but I wouldn't have thought it would count it the moment it... I don't know. Anyway, it's nice though. It saves me having to do an extra suborbital hop. Into the sunlight. Right, we can basically start deorbiting now. That should do the trick. In fact, that's all of our delta V gone, so that's fine. Jettison that stage. I really need to remember to thrust limit that engine, because it's I don't do that in the VAB. Oh, they're upside down at the moment. Let's make sure they're... Well, upside down in space is a relative term, I suppose, but right way up as far as we're concerned. I think I've only got a fairly minimal amount of ablator, but honestly, coming back from Kerbal in orbit, you don't even need any ablator. You don't need a heat shield at all. Which is a good thing, because your very first flights you'll have to do without a heat shield. I can actually do part of the ride down looking from the point of view of the cabin. Might just roll it a bit though. It's fine. It's fine. See, they're happy. They were up there just long enough to eat a packet of peanuts, and then they're coming back down again. It's all part of the deluxe Star Tour service here at... God, do I even have an official name for this space program? I don't think so. I just called it the career, or the contract's career. Gosh, I hope we're going to come down over water. We should do. We should come down over this stretch of water here. Because it's a nice curve at the moment, but once you start to hit more atmospheric resistance, it will shorten a bit. So I'm hoping it doesn't shorten too much that I fall on land, but it shouldn't happen. It should be that patch of sea. We're starting to get our heating effects. Won't take long to burn off that ablator, but yeah, this is a relatively gentle re-entry compared to what Jebediah experienced coming back from the Mun anyway. Usually by this point I'd have started to think about going to places like Minmus and whatever, but it is an interesting way of doing things, just strictly following the contracts to the letter. Because sometimes constraints can be interesting. I like that, Brett. The Jedi Entertainment Space Stores, or JEST for short. That's quite good. Right, yeah, we'll be coming down in ocean. This is fine. Well, this was a nice smooth re-entry, all things considered. We actually have ablator left over. Even the absolutely minimal amount of ablator was not even fully used up, so that was a really gentle re-entry in the scheme of things. I do like that once you've been through it turns a bit blacker. I think it's the only part that does that. I don't know if that is the game itself or if that's a texture replacement mod. So if you're wondering why all my Kerbals have hair, that's down to a texture replacement mod. Let's see what my Kerbals can see. Not a lot at the moment. Just some clouds. A bunch of ocean below us. Right, let's pop the chute, start slowing this down. And we can make sure our splashed down contracts also correctly fire. Note to Jedi, parachute! I don't know what you mean, Tanku. What could you be referring to there? You know, for the longest time, it's funny you mention that, for the longest time the parachutes didn't interact with each other even slightly. They just kind of completely merged through each other. And it was only comparatively recently, like within the last, I think, 2 years. Or was it slightly longer? I don't know. But they made the change where the parachutes would kind of bounce off each other slightly so it looked a bit more realistic. So this was an entirely successful tourist mission. Even more successful than I thought it would be. And we're also getting some bonus contracts done at the same time, which is very nice. This has been a very efficient mission in terms of making some money. Surely, though, if this was... I don't know why you've particularly gone one of Madonna's... why you've said one of Madonna's bras, but okay. But surely if it was one of Madonna's bras, it should be pointier? It should be more of a cone shape? What was the famous look? Well, nearly there, 200 meters to go. Man, there's all these things like crew reports and... Well, apparently I've already had that particular crew report, but there's all these science things I could be doing that I just can't do because it's not in the contracts. I don't know if it counts as cheating exactly to be using the admin programs to convert, you know, things like reputation and money into science, but I don't think it is really. It's not like you can get huge amounts of science that way. Splosh! So, run test. Bam, there's one done. And that survived re-entry just fine, so we can run test, and bam, there is another one done. And I got a whole 15 science out of that. That's quite nice. Right, we can probably, yeah, upgrade that at this point. Can I think I can only have one contract at a time that, or can I? Oh, here we go. Yeah, so I can. Takes funds income, converts to science. Quite an expensive startup cost, though. It's going to have a big impact on my funds, but funds aren't really going to be an issue, so I think we will have that. It's a big upfront cost, but we can afford that. At some point I might rejig the reputation to funds as well, but we'll leave that at 25% for the time being. Not reputation for funds, reputation for science. So that'll be even more science, which is good. Let's take a quick look at the contracts. It's another tourist contract. Orbit around Kerbal. That's not really worth doing on its own. We'd have to stack up that with another one, basically. Pressure readings. Oh, I might take this one. Some of these I can't actually do yet, but some of them I can. We will have a quick check of where that is on the map, though. If it's too far away, I don't want to do it. Yeah, no, that's a fair ways away. Oh, what's this one? Temperature readings. Some above, some below. So that's the pressure ones. That's yeah, that's a really long flight. That one's not too bad, but it's over the pole. I might take that one, but that's not going to be what I'm doing just now. So what was that? Temperature surveys. Yeah, that's up near the pole. Two of them are below. So again, that's worth some science. And as you can see, we've actually halved the amount of funding we're going to be getting. Like, fully cut it in half. But that's fine. It does, however, squeeze out contracts like the VIP one, where they weren't particularly high income to begin with, but yeah, that's not really affordable at this point. Do I want any of these others? I don't think I do. So what's active? 2 vessels in orbit. A decoupler landed at Kerbin. I might be able to do that one just on the landing pad. Sort of, Ed Beaver, but the only orbital ones I have been given to me at the moment are rescue contracts, and I don't have... like, I don't really have a way to fulfill those. Right, we're going to have to strip off the test part before we can use that again. That's fine. Right, let's load up my landing pad test-a-majig. TD25 decoupler, which is that one. So we're going to come up with a completely ridiculous looking contraption. Because why not? That looks fine, right? Hell, you know what? I don't even have to do that. We could just scale it down. I think this should theoretically count as being landed at Kerbin. Right, at Kerbin, landed. Yes, green tick marks for both. So we can just... bam! Easy money. We'll see if that's generated a new interesting contract for me. Is this the CV rework? I don't think so. No, that was that one. That was already. Test the heat shield at the launch site. There's another cheapy one, but that's fine. Well, I think I might. I've sort of run out of the easier to do ones. There's this rendezvous one, but I think that would require me practicing a bit when I'm not streaming. It's the kind of thing, if I could figure out how to do it, which I never have been able to do before, getting two vehicles to rendezvous with each other. Yeah, it's... I don't know. It's something I think I'm going to need some practice at. So I think we might want to wrap the stream up here, because I've been going for nearly 3 hours anyway. We're getting on towards 3 hours at this point. So I think this might be a good place to wrap things up. So yeah, this is me in KSP messing around. You can try it out for yourself if you have it. Just having a go at doing only what's in the contracts. It does make for an interesting challenge. Of course, you can always just tweak things so that science gain is vastly reduced anyway, and just do whatever the hell you want. But sometimes it's interesting trying to go for a different thing. I'm trying to think of a word there that isn't challenge again, but I completely failed. Well done, brain. Right, so anyway, let's bring up the nice looking slideshow again. Thank you very much, everybody who has tuned in. I do appreciate it, and I may be doing this again. There's not a guarantee of it. This might just be a one-off KSP stream for this particular thing, but I might come back with my modded build and maybe do some stuff there if I get the urge to do so. I guess we'll see. But yeah, anyway, wherever you are, I hope you have a good evening or day or whatever, and I shall catch you next time.